Welcome back to the Banger Bar, everyone. Hello, it's Sam Dunn at Banger Films. We're back with another edition of Lock Horns, our live and interactive show here in the Banger Bar, where every week we rip apart, tear apart, and lock horns over our much debated heavy metal family tree, which we created many moons ago for our first film, Heavy Metal, A Headbanger's Journey, where we divided metal into many subgenres. Before we launch into this, just a quick reminder to please subscribe to Banger TV and help us create the first all-metal global digital channel. And also a reminder that Banger, we are now the official metal curators on Apple Music. This week, hardcore, a subject that's already generated quite a bit of debate on the boards because it harmonizes punk and metalcore and all of these things that twist and turn in and outside metal. So it's going to be a good one. To help me out, joining me here in the studio will be Wade MacNeil, who is many things, most importantly, a lifelong punk. He is a DJ on 102.1, a member of the Canadian band alexisonfire, and also the UK band Gallows. Check out this. Welcome, sir, Wade. Thanks for joining me.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
Yeah, awesome. Let's start by having you tell me a little bit about kind of how you got into metal and more specifically like hardcore, why it appeals to you. Tell us about that.
I think I've always liked frightening things. I've always been drawn to scary stuff. So when I was really little, I really liked Phantom of the Opera way too much, which is probably really strange for a little kid. And then, scary movies, there's horror films. And then I think, the most frightening music that I came across was metal, was punk, was hardcore. And especially I wanted to go see some shows when I was like 14. It was terrifying in like the best possible way. Right. And, it's warped my mind. Yep. And it's why I'm here today. And
why do you think you gravitated towards playing more music on kind of more the hardcore end of the scale as opposed to just pure straight up metal? What was it about that hardcore sound that appealed to you?
Well, I think, first of all, we weren't good enough players to be able to, you have to sit in your room, not speak to any girls in high school to get those arpeggios down to be a good metal player. Yeah. I wasn't doing that.
Good use of your time. Listen up. No arpeggios. Girls are more important.
Sure. And on top of that, too, I grew up in a small town. I grew up in St. Catharines. And so the guys that I played in a band with, even if I was trying to make us a metal band, there was 4 other guys in the band that were trying to do different things.
Right.
And so that was alexisonfire, 5 guys playing in 5 different bands at the same time. And I think that's why it sounds the way it does.
Very cool. Well, I'm glad you're here. We got an expert in the house like we like to do every week here on Lock Horns. Just a quick reminder to all of you out there that as much as we like to talk in here, the priority is what you have to say. Tell us what you think. Tell us who you think should be included in the chart, who should be excluded, but more importantly, tell us why. Share your opinions. And already joining us on the chat, we've got fans from Kentucky, Texas, California, Alabama, London, Ontario, Sweden, Chile, Bosnia, Austria, Brazil, and Portugal. Thank you everyone for joining us from around the world. As you know, we tend to talk too much, so when you hear this sound, means we need to shut up and move on to the next thing. Thank you, Lisa Ladiseur, off-screen producer. I think really a good way to get into this conversation is this age-old debate between punk and metal. What does punk have to do with metal? What does metal have to do with punk? And to kick us off, we've gathered a few clips from the vast Banger Films archive where we've talked to some legendary musicians about this very topic. Check it out.
Never mind the bollocks, it's a great metal album, it really is. And the lyrics were just so angry and so off the wall at the time. I mean, they really did have an impact at the time. So I think it took a long time to come up with anything as heavy or as angry as the punk thing.
Whereas in fact it almost seems like punk evolved out of metal and then metal evolved out of punk.
Yeah, well I found that, you know, a lot of the original punk bands loved Sabbath. It's weird.
I liked punk. I thought it was very important for the music scene, and it was back to little tiny clubs like this, and you could feel the energy, and it sort of said to me, instead of spending 15 years learning to play the guitar to a very, very high standard, you could get going now. You could form, because of course all I wanted to do was be in a band, but instead of having this incredible benchmark of, say, Deep Purple to live up to, suddenly I could play the guitar like maybe Steve Jones from the Sex Pistols. It had so much, you know, energy and the do-it-yourself attitude of make your own record and get out and do your own gig, and you know, I think some of that rubbed off on you know, me and my band.
Why, as a musician, were you drawn more to going in that more metal direction rather than being a punk band?
Because I grew up with stuff, you know, early 70s stuff and all that, you know, it was all, you know, rock, sort of progressive rock or classic rock or, you know, stuff like that. Whereas the punks came along and they couldn't really play very well. It's not like the punks now, they can play. You had the ones at the time, you know, the punks at the time couldn't really play their instruments very well, and so it didn't go down too well with bands like us.
Even though you guys were doing something musically quite different than punk, do you think you were inspired by how the punk?
We were inspired by nothing, you know, anything to do with punk. We just didn't want have anything to do with it at all. It's not like we wanted to ride on the crest of the wave what was happening to punk. We didn't. We didn't want anything to do with it.
But maybe punk could be credited with at least bringing speed.
I'm sorry, can't credit it with anything.
Come on,
No.
Steve.
No, we hated it.
Don't believe
we
you.
absolutely hated it. We didn't, you know, we really didn't want to be part of any of it. And to us, it was just like, you know, you know, do you live in overseas or whatever? Maybe you look at it a different way. But in England at the time, it was absolutely it was punk on one side. It was a bit like mods and rockers. It was like punk and rock, you know, classic rock or you know whatever. And it was they didn't like each other at all.
So there you have it. Me trying to get one of my all-time heroes, Steve Harris, to at least admit there's some shred of punk influence in the Iron Maiden, at least the first record, but no, sorry, got shut down.
I mean, you could argue with us about this stuff, but you really can't argue with those guys.
I mean, come on, Deano. Anyway, clearly I need to let it go. And so we will. Let's talk about this. What does this mean? If we could come up with some definition of what is hardcore, what comes to mind?
So I think to define hardcore, we need to touch on punk really quick, in that if punk took, you know, if punk ripped the guts out of like rock and roll song structure by like fucking off the solo, shortening up the songs, making them faster, snottier, louder, hardcore did exactly that to punk. So you, instead of doing a drum fill into the song, you're like hitting the floor tom and going in the song.
Yeah.
You're getting rid of the solo altogether, not even playing a short one, and you're just amping up everything.
Yep.
You know, punk has like, it's still like classically rooted in this like rhythm and blues songs or rock and roll songs. It follows that structure, but hardcore just like gets rid of any of that build, and it's just like all payoff all the time.
That's right. Yeah.
Not building up to everything. You're starting out like at 100 and like staying there.
Right. I mean, that's funny because I think there's a lot of the appeal to metal fans about metal is that big build, right?
Sure.
You're building to some like crowning moment on the top of the mountaintop where we're all gonna like fucking scream our guts out. But hardcore, punk, obviously the same. It's like, let's get to the fucking point.
Yeah, and I think that even gets more and more extreme as you kind of get later, like the wave of hardcore bands after this, like you look at a band like Negative Approach, they're just like one snare shot, blast for 30 seconds, maybe 2 riffs, out.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and like that's it. It's just kind of like the max of everything you can do.
Well, I think we're going to have a good debate because, of course, a lot of what people love about metal, it has got that grandeur, it's got that size, it's got that sort of like, we're going to take our time and fucking play this riff for a minute and a half, and fuck you, this is the way we're going to do it. So anyway, let's get into it. So let's take a look at some of the bands up here. Wade, tell me, I mean, obviously we did this chart 10 years ago. It's been a while. Your first reaction to what's up here?
You know when people say they try and qualify things by saying like, no offense, and then they follow up by something that no, it's going to piss you off, probably offend you. No offense, but DOA, get it out of here.
All right, DOA.
So DOA, I mean, ultimate respect to DOA, legendary band, huge legacy, but aside from their second record having hardcore in the title, I think they're just straight up punk band.
Straight
to
up
me.
punk band, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And they've done so much for punk. They were playing, you know, in places in Europe where no punk bands were going, where I'm sure people didn't even want them to go.
Yeah.
You know, in the early 80s. But to me, it's not a hardcore band.
All this episode actually is going to be about me trying to get Dayglow abortions on here, but that's a separate issue.
a separate-
Anybody else that doesn't fit for you, or does it?
To me, I think Minor Threat is like a quintessential like hardcore band.
Right, yeah.
I think same thing with Black Flag.
Right.
I'd say same thing with AF.
Yep.
You know, these guys to me, this fish hook pattern right here is, you know, I think they're all punk bands that have a lot of like hardcore elements.
Sure.
I think they belong here, but you know, there's some bleed over.
Okay,
right?
cool. Well, that's a good start. DOA has been set aside. Lisa, what's next?
You got to get rid of the Misfits.
Okay, Misfits, let's look at the boards. Here we go. Locking Horns, Jacob Johnson. How did you get Misfits in the hardcore joint? Artur Felipe Castana, welcome back. Get Misfits out of that list now. Philip Alvarez, Misfits only had one hardcore album. They can be out. Joe Hanlon, the Misfits are definitely horror punk or monster rock, but Earth AD could be argued as a hardcore or even thrash album. Tanaka Tomohiro, Earth AD is also one of the most influential albums on metal by a non-metal band. Wow, the opinions are there. Brandon Fitzgerald, Earth AD is like the roots of hardcore. Abraham Talamentes, Earth AD is by far speed metal at its earliest. Also, the band had a clear influence of Metallica, GNR, Motley Crue, most recently Murder Dolls. So, what do you think there? Some heated discussion.
I think
on
the Misfits should be on every chart because they are one of the best punk bands of all time. But yeah, I hear it. I think they're a punk band that touches on all these other areas. People said some stuff about Earth AD, like that's a great precursor to like speed metal.
Right.
You know, and then there's like a lot of the other records are more melodic and stuff in that rooted in that R&B stuff that's kind of more classic punk.
Sure,
And then
sure.
I don't know, they touch on a lot of stuff.
Yep. Well, I think we've got some allies. Jayantgar, glad to see Misfits go. Santiago Brajo, Misfits are punk, not hardcore. And Giggle Skull, love that one.
You wouldn't
Misfits
imagine
out.
Giggle Skull would want the Misfits out, you know, but
There you go.
Never
there
cease
you
to be
go.
amazed, you know.
It is. So there we go. We've set them off to the side with DOA because clearly there's some strong opinions. Now, speaking of opinions, you had a feeling about one band that was sorely missing from the chart.
I did. To me, quintessential.
Uh-huh.
Bang!
There you go.
Cro-Mags. In my opinion, this is like when you get the defining of what a hardcore band is.
Yep.
They've taken the speed of Black Flag, or sorry, the speed of like Bad Brains. They're playing that fast. They're taking all these nods from UK oi bands like Sham 69 and Cockney Rejects, like that kind of anthemic oi vocals.
Yep.
They're putting that in there. They're focusing on not this like nihilistic stuff. They're focusing on personal struggle
Yep.
and stuff like that. And to me, that's Cro-Mags. It's exactly what hardcore
Well, I
is.
think we probably got somebody out there that's going to agree with you. Mark Burton, Cro-Mags must be on the list or this has no credibility. Ouch! Matthew Marian on Facebook, Cro-Mags definitely need to be on this list. Age of Quarrel, their first LP, is amazing. They were one of the bridges for me coming over from thrash to learning about hardcore. It's kind of cool. Mark Burton is here again. Cro-Mags were early hardcore. Their sound may be somewhat metal, but everyone considered them hardcore in the 80s. And Levi McIntyre says that Cro-Mags should remain in crossover since the first album had some metal impulses in it, but then from Best Wishes onwards, they became metal.
I thought for a second he was saying best wishes to you guys, though. I'm not that.
I know. So this brings up a whole nother matter altogether, Wade, and that's this Pandora's box.
It's opening the Hellraiser box. Eh?
What does that mean to you?
I think
Apart from a great DRI record.
this means to me, this is when the hardcore bands have been playing long enough that they can play their guitars, that their drummers can probably play really fast.
Right.
And I think it's bringing the metal influence really into punk at this point when crossover starts happening. And I also think even kind of the word, I think a lot of these bands are trying to cross over a bit into the mainstream.
Right.
You know, like at the time in the late 80s when this stuff started happening, like the DRIs and like Gangrene even Discharge, you know, made that Grave New World record, which a lot of people shit on, but I think is awesome. I think they were trying to cross over to actually maybe have a longer career, to become a little bit more mainstream. So that's what I think crossover
Now,
is.
interestingly, leading up to the discussion today, these guys, one of your faves, it was almost split down the middle where 51% of people thought that Cro-Mags was hardcore, but 49% said that they should be crossover. What's your thoughts on that?
I mean, obviously the internet is a great place for discussion and people's opinions, but you know, everyone that disagrees with me, you're totally wrong in this situation.
That's right. We're here, you're out in the internet. That's the difference. Dead Skin Mask, we're just getting more love for Cro-Mags. Yes, Cro-Mags. Noah Zarate, yes, Cro-Mags. Stephen J. Cro-Mags, our quintessential hardcore band. Their influence on Sepultura is quite apparent. Love the Seps from Brazil. Lisa, we're going to go to another clip. Is that what we'd like to do?
Yeah, we're going to see what people on the non-internets had to say about hardcore and metal.
Okay, here's a few more clips from the Banger Archive. Check it out.
The hardcore bands, and especially Refused in those early years, they were completely nuts. Like seriously, like just dropping off of, you know, stacks down on the stage floor without even catching themselves, you know, and just doing like flips and stuff on stage and really like just hurting themselves. And that kind of also, I think, brought, you know, we got to kind of step up and we got to be even more like outgoing in the aggressive like compartment of things, you know. So that also I think had a very positive effect for us, you know.
We were the second generation where we took a little bit from column A and column B instead of segregating it, you know, like, because literally I would go see Sick of It All with Sepultura and it was just skinheads versus long hairs, and that's just the way it went. And like, it was great that those walls kind of like came down. And I think a lot of it too is a lot of the hardcore bands, once they got better at their instruments, kind of started bringing those metal influences in almost like subconsciously.
The hardcore bands, and especially
Some strong opinions there from metal musicians, Shadows Fall, Brian and Thomas Haka from Meshuggah, sharing their feelings about punk and actually really the importance of punk and hardcore on metal music. We're going to get to the new bands and see what people want to add, Wade, but just give me your sense on where you're seeing hardcore at right now, because obviously most of these bands have been around for a long time or are no longer with us. So what's your sense of hardcore right now?
I think, I don't know, I think it's an amazing time for heavy music right now. I think there's a lot of bands that, you know, we miss that are even like a lot of 90s bands that people seem to be throwing out there, but I don't know, it's easier to consume music than ever these days, right?
Yeah.
So for you to find, you know, obscure old stuff, you don't need to dig through bands' record covers and see like, oh, like they're wearing a Necros shirt. Maybe I should buy that Necros record.
That's
People don't need to live with. There's a thing I always thought about when I was younger. I would buy a record, and sometimes that record would be terrible, and
Yeah.
I just have to listen to it for a really long time.
That's right, that's
until I add, and that's like not a problem anymore. So
right.
I think things like the new wave of hardcore is being, influenced by everything.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's leading to some incredible stuff. And a lot of these bands are still playing, and I don't
It's
know.
true. I mean, we talked earlier before we went on air about how this chart can just kind of splinter and splinter and splinter because the influences across all corners of heavy music are just sort of crisscrossing at a kind of dizzying rate, and it's not, the old days where, I bought my first Venom record because I liked the cover.
Yeah.
Never fucking heard them before. And it was like, okay, I like Venom. Good thing the music's as good as the cover.
Well, even in the same way, I think, I don't know, I don't think people identify, like, obviously there's still punks and metalheads,
Yeah.
all the people that are watching today and,
Yeah.
and joining in the discussion, I think that means a lot to a lot of people, but I think it's a totally different feeling than maybe 10 years ago,
For sure.
15 years ago, 20 years ago. It's, people, I think people are, there's, the way they listen to music is totally different.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think you said, before we started, you said if we'd done this 20 years ago, people would have, chased us out of the building with torches or whatever.
People would be
Like,
down here ripping this off the wall because we shouldn't have punk bands in a metal show. Anyway, time to move on, and this is where it could get ugly. We open it up to all of you to tell us who you think should be removed or added. And I think, Lisa, we've got some strong opinions about Sick of It All, correct?
We do.
Okay.
Let's debate.
Let's debate. Matthew Oliver, where is Sick of It All? Well, they're right there. Oliver Grun, Sick of It all the way. A Deadskin Mask, Sick of It All. 20 years, still going strong. And Rock Orange Edits, the thrash, death metal, and cat fan. So diverse. Not sure if Sick of It All is hardcore or crossover. And Ollie Ray, Sick of It All should be on the hardcore chart. Your thoughts on Sick of It All?
need to be on there for sure.
Yeah.
And they're such a staple of hardcore and what hardcore has become, and they've been so true to it over the years.
Yeah.
Like Sick of It All has been doing the Wall of Death for the whole time they've been a band.
Yeah.
That is something that has been co-opted by like everything. Like people do that at rap shows.
Yeah.
People do that at every type of show. Bands that have no idea who Sick of It All is
Yeah.
are doing that because their like contribution to hardcore and music is like so strong
Yeah.
that I think something like that is even, you probably see that at like a
Yeah.
Justin Bieber concert eventually.
Hopefully
When he
not.
puts out the hard record.
We're believers. But in that Brian Fair comment, actually, he comments about how he remembers going to a Sick of It All and Sepultura show when he was younger, and it was like tribal warfare. But he was making the same point that we were earlier, which is like it's different now. He said, likely I'm kind of second generation, and this stuff can all share the same stage. We got another band here that people are chiming in on. TSOL. Henry Misery, TSOL needs to be added pronto. Ask Slayer, they will vouch for you. Shroud Misery agrees. They influenced bands such as Slayer and some darker sounding bands. They had a real gloomy sound as well as influencing goth. Their early stuff is undoubtedly aggressive. Add them, please. A please. I think it's the first please on Lockhorn. I mean, frankly,
nice.
if any band influenced Slayer, like, they need to be on there. Thoughts on this band?
TSOL?
Yeah.
I think it's a bit too gloomy. I think it's a bit
Yeah,
too
yeah.
gothy.
Yeah, yeah.
I think TSOL is a band that, they saw the Misfits play.
Yep.
And they're like, how do we modernize Misfits stuff with some like death rock stuff,
Right, right.
So they probably saw the Misfits play and Christian Death, and they're a California band, and so that's their like punk take on it.
Right,
but
right.
to me, amazing band, but to me it's not.
Doesn't
it's not a
have
hardcore
that
band.
sort of like leanness and speed, I guess, maybe
Yeah.
that you'd expect from hardcore. Yes, Lisa.
I'm going to play my goth card and say no.
Oh, she's pulling
Too
the goth
goth.
card, and the goth card is a dark card. And we do not want to mess with that fucking card. So let's move on. Germs. David, Debbie, Bochette. Germs. GI is the ideal hardcore punk album. Adolescence should be there too. Adolescence, that's a band I haven't heard about in a long time. Andrew Davidson, what Germs were doing in '79 on their GI record was way beyond just about everything else out there in terms of intensity and speed. The closest competition was probably the Bad Brains. Are Germs hardcore in your opinion?
Like, I think of them as a punk band, but
Yeah.
I think those are some really valid points.
Sure.
It was really straight ahead. It was really brutal.
Right.
You know, Darby Crash is an absolute maniac.
Yeah, for sure.
And yeah, I mean, I think if you could make the argument for Bad Brains, you could definitely make it for the Germs.
Okay, well, last week I made the mistake of writing too many bands down too early, but maybe we just need to get Germs up here represented because perhaps they need to be part of the story, just not part of the hardcore story. But we definitely want to hear if you agree or disagree. Germs, TSOL, haven't been added. If you feel strongly, let's get them in there. Refused. Thomas talked about them on the clip. Mikey, Warriors X, refused. Identity Thief Official, refused, damn it. And Joey Crisis says, would agree with refused, definitely influenced a lot of bands down the line. Dan Hillmart refused in Breach. Horror Master refused, has to be on the chart. Philip Alvarez refused, add them. Their first 2 albums are hardcore as fuck. And Alex Smart says that refused in terms of bands playing ingesting hardcore today. I have to say they are high on the list. And Eastie's Blogspot says refuse needs to be added with a smiley face. What do you think?
I mean, Refused did the cockiest thing in the world. They named their record The Shape of Punk to Come, but it was, you know?
Fucking good record.
It's pretty much untouchable.
Yeah.
You know? I think without having a million band names on the list, like, I don't know, is it too modern?
I know. Well, this is it's a tough one because obviously not that hardcore is by any means orthodox, but Refused have a lot of different stuff going on. There's those electronic elements. There's those kind of almost spoken word elements that they play with. Things are kind of almost falling apart at times, and then they just hammer you.
They might be technically too good.
Maybe.
To be a hardcore band.
Too good for hardcore. You heard it here. I didn't say it. Wade said it. But maybe they will be added. We'll just see how things, the shape of hardcore to come. What have we got next here, Lisa? Comeback Kid. We got, Comeback Kid. Minor Threat. The Comedian 221. Says Minor Threat, Comeback Kid, and Refused for sure. Joel Harold is back on the board. Comeback Kid and Have Heart are the only bands in the 21st century that I can think of that could be considered part of that early hardcore tradition. Full disclosure, Comeback Kid, no idea. Fill me in.
Great Canadian hardcore band.
Okay.
Winnipeg. Shout out to Winnipeg.
The Peg.
But I don't know. I think that's another step above Refused. Even like that's even more modern than that. So
right.
You know, Comeback Kid they're around the same age as me.
Right.
And you know, we were starting our bands after The Shape of Punk to Come came out.
Right.
So The Shape of Punk to Come had already been realized.
Right.
We were trying to rip that off.
Maybe we're talking about post-hardcore here at the risk of creating another effing subgenre, but maybe that's where Refused and Comeback Kid belong. Does that post-hardcore
I don't know if it
thing
gets
mean
into
anything
the
to you?
like. I mean, I think Comeback Kid is true to the, you know, like the original stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think it's too modern.
Okay, maybe we'll leave it off, although Peg, we want to give a shout out. We've got some more people agreeing. Manute Drool91 says yes on Comeback Kid, and Pundrith says that Comeback Kid is Canadian. Come on.
How many bands can be on here?
As many as we want.
Let's just put Comeback Kid on then.
Until we run out of magnets, or Lisa tells us to shut up. So it's usually the former. Comeback Kid. Because, why? Because we love the Peg, and we actually moved DOA off. So we're gonna put them in there. We can reorg it later. What's the board saying? Mikey Warriors X says that Gorilla Biscuits needs to be on the list. Joey Crisis, I would put Refused on the line between hardcore metal and hardcore punk. Gorilla Biscuits is more on the punk side of that line. And Joel Harold, Gorilla Biscuits would be hardcore punk, but Refused would actually be, dare I suggest it, the pioneers of the screamo genre.
Dirty word.
Very, very dirty.
Dirty word.
Very dirty. We don't want to get screamo up there, or we might destroy the board. Lisa, anybody else? I don't know if there's enough consensus there on Gorilla Biscuits to mandate an addition. Madball Kevin McKee. H2O, pardon me, and Madball need to be on the list, and Minute Drool 91, Biohazard are more of crossover than metalcore. So first of all, Madball.
Madball, like very true to the roots of hardcore, New York hardcore. Like a little bit more bounce, you know, almost like that Biohazard type of vibe where it's it's a little I don't know, it's a little like, I don't want to say rap, but like it's got this, it's all bounce. And
Speed bag metal.
Swagger.
Yeah, no, I know, and I think we're kind of getting into that territory of Biohazard you mentioned, Hatebreed, and dare I say, you know, you take one further step into metal with Pantera, where you've kind of got more that tougher, mid-paced, sort of muscular end of the hardcore spectrum. But hey, what do I know? That's why Wade's here. Santiago Brasho says that Gorilla Biscuit, best New York hardcore band. And Tim Dapp, Canadian hardcore legend, SNFU, yes, West Coast. Love it. Rock Orange Edits, the Cat Fan, says that we need post-hardcore and crust punk subgenres. This may break the board in terms of subgenres. I think more than any other episode of Lock Horns. Amoebics, Thomas Proskow. If I could add a band, it would be Amoebics, and the crust punk genre are the most important link between punk and metal. Also, the Plasmatics are another very important metal punk link, but I would consider them hardcore though. And we've got Lee Stabline agreeing with Amoebics.
I think Amoebics is definitely on that crust punk list. I don't think it's on.
You don't think it's hardcore?
I don't think it's here. It goes into that strange territory too, where a lot of crust bands go and they get. It's a similar thing that happens with black metal bands too. They get atmospheric and stuff, and the crust punk bands, they get almost like acoustic, and it's that huge build up stuff.
Right.
And Amoebics, like you listen to the modern stuff, it's almost soundtracky.
Right, and you're losing that sort of all payoff.
I mean, they've got the early stuff, and the new stuff still gets like it still hits. But I think they're from they're a crust punk band.
Okay. We're getting a lot of additions here, but not a lot of them are going through the eye of the needle of hardcore, because Wade's a bit of a no man. I don't know if you noticed that, but let's see what we can do. This exists. Hey, this exists. Hey guys, I am here. You can start now. Okay. Justin Briley, Madball belongs here, guys. No, it's not pure, but the genre evolves. So there's some love for Madball out there, but I've actually only got one magnet left, Lisa. Ooh. So I don't know if you're saving any gems out there, but I think we need to build some consensus before we add Madball or any. Let me ask you. I mean, are there any other bands missing that haven't come up on the board in your opinion? I mean, if we walked away right now and said,
I don't want to get too obscure here.
Yes.
But I want to throw out one that I haven't seen a few people mention.
Okay.
And I think Gauze needs to be on the list.
Okay.
Japanese band. I feel like Gauze is almost like Cro-Mags Japan.
Okay.
Like I feel like it's this legendary like Japanese institution.
Okay.
Just untouchable band.
Cool. Never heard of them. How do we spell this band, Gauze? Educate me.
G-A-U-Z-E.
Yeah. Just as it's spelled in the hospital. Gauze. Good to have some Japanese love. We didn't get time to get ex-Japan on the glam metal chart last time. What have we got here? Stephen J. Integrity Dudes.
Just after we put the last one up, somebody says Integrity.
Get out the eraser. Tell me about Integrity.
I mean, Integrity is just, it has this metal tinge to it, but it's just so bleak.
Right.
Like all the imagery, everything around the band, the shows are super sketchy.
Right.
I was talking about how the music I like the most frightened me.
Fan of the opera.
They're a fucking terrifying band.
Yeah.
All the imagery is of like the Process Church and Manson and all this stuff that is
all the
like,
shit that's really scary.
It's stuff that's real and terrifying.
Yeah.
And I feel like they're the musical equivalent to that. They're the soundtrack to that stuff.
Integrity. Okay. Well, let's hear. Anybody agree with with Wade on that. Couch Crashers, again, refused, expanded on hardcore, and have brought tons of influences that modern bands still use. Gauze is also a great band, getting some love there. Eli Unger, add the Casualties, because they are a big hardcore punk band right now. They are the biggest hardcore punk band, and they have influenced a lot of bands. And Devin McCallum casually states, put on fucking Madball.
Sounds like a Madball fan.
It does sound like
Put
a Madball.
on fucking Madball.
I'm not getting in that guy's way. Maybe I'll casually slip Refused over there and see what that does. Poison Idea is also getting... See, maybe we did commit too quickly to the gauze. We ran out of magnets prematurely. Horror Master agrees. Integrity, more metalcore. Okay, so maybe we got some difference of opinion there, but certainly Integrity is getting some love, albeit Ollie Ray is saying that Integrity is metalcore. So maybe Poison Idea, if we had another magnet.
I'd love to throw that one in there.
Maybe maybe Integrity. Madball, we might get our asses kicked by the Madball fans out there. Crisis says, isn't Integrity more metalcore? Okay, so we're maybe safe from that accusation that they belong in hardcore. Lisa, how we doing out there?
Oh, there's a lot of people with their all caps on.
Okay.
And a lot of people that maybe weren't around for our metalcore show and some of our other shows.
Okay,
But
all right.
Hatebreed keeps coming up.
Hatebreed keeps coming up. I mean, Hatebreed, we talked a lot about on the metalcore show. I can't remember what we did with them, but I think we left them there. They're clearly a hugely important band, but Tom O'Brien says add fucking Hatebreed. Yeah, it's true, the Madball. You don't want to piss off the Madball and Hatebreed.
Let's say you could get a Madball Hatebreed tour going together, all caps.
Ivinder Gauti 666 Magnets or No Show?
Yep. Say that again.
Tell me.
You can say that again.
We need more magnets.
Oh, 666 Magnets or No
See,
Show.
here, I think it's starting to get blurred a little bit,
Yeah.
and that's what we were talking about, There's the
give me some
original
clarity.
ones.
Yeah.
I think the ones that were already here, there's clarity in this. But
Sure.
when we start talking about even like this, because it becomes like Comeback Kid, hardcore band, but a lot of melodic influence, right?
Okay.
So it starts maybe pushing in, and maybe that's melodic hardcore.
Right.
I think we start going to these fringe things, we start adding them. Refuse. Is Refuse a post-hardcore band?
Yep. Probably.
Probably.
Yeah.
Because musically there's so much going on.
Right, and what about Gauze?
Gauze.
Could we argue they're a post-hardcore band as well?
I think Gauze is. I stick with the Gauze. I'm happy. We use the last
His
magnet for
boots are
Gauze.
bolted to the floor on Gauze, people. The Comedian 221, Comeback Kid for sure, should also be in hardcore. Same with Alexis on Fire.
Alexis on Fire, definitely not a hardcore band. A bunch of wimps from Ontario.
Not a prepared answer. Never had to answer that question before, I'm sure. Okay, well, I don't know, Lisa. I think maybe the dust is slowly starting to settle. I think we leave Refused. I think we leave Comeback Kid. I think we leave Gauze. These guys will remain. I mean, I don't think this is really question mark material. I think we're making the argument that DOA is in fact a punk band. And we're making the same argument with Misfits.
I feel good about both those things.
We can shift those over, and then we're kind of dealing with TSOL, the Germs, and Amoebics kind of living. Although maybe Germs belongs in punk as well. Maybe.
Yes.
Oh, I have one extra magnet.
Oh
Look at
my
that.
God.
Hiding under the Germs. Lisa, what are we gonna do with it?
We might have to defer to one of our friends and another hardcore expert in the Banger family.
That's
Sam
right.
Sutherland.
Sam Sutherland at this exists says, tear it all down, add Gorilla Biscuits. Okay. I know better than to piss off This Exists. We're gonna add Gorilla Biscuits. There you go. There you go.
Hope you're happy, Internet.
Hope you're happy, everybody. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for
Great
having me.
show. This was This was challenging. It's a bit messy, this world.
It's tough, we have our opinions. People in the Matrix have their opinions, but
Okay.
I feel good about it.
We got some good additions up there. Thank you, everyone, for participating on Lockhorns with us this week. Thanks, everyone off camera. The Lockhorns team, Daniel, Lisa, Lana, and Andrew. Reminder, subscribe to Banger TV. Help us build an all-metal global digital channel, and go and check out the Banger playlists on Apple Music. Couple closing announcements. In 2 weeks' time, March 31st, 4 p.m. Eastern, we're back here for the first of 2 black metal Lockhorns. Ooh. It will get dark, it will get fierce. Bring out your dead. Next week, we're doing something a little bit different, however. We always envision Lockhorns being something more than just debating subgenres, and with recent events, we thought it was important to talk about the issue of race and racism in metal because of recent events which you guys all know about. So we're doing something a little bit different next week, and we want you to be here and be part of the conversation. Thanks again to Wade. Thanks again to everyone. Thanks for chiming in. Go hardcore. We'll see you next week.